Senator Libous, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Liz.
So you are actually a very busy guy. You have 3 titles now that I've counted. You are Deputy Majority Leader, now the Republicans are back. You are head of the political arm, the Senate Republican Campaign Committee, and also now chair of the very powerful, pretty much the most powerful, Rules Committee. How are you juggling all of that?
Well, actually, Senator Skelos chairs the Rules Committee, but I just run the meetings for the Rules Committee. But, you know, it's pretty easy to do. I've always been a very busy fellow throughout my life. When I was in the private sector, I wore many hats in running a small business and working in banking. So I find it exciting and very challenging.
So you're going to be running the floor, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And how are things going to be different?
Well, we're going to start the Senate on time. We're not going to sit there and wait till 4:15.
But that's a throwback to the Joe Bruno days.
Well,
actually.
but it's the right way to run the Senate. If you're going to call session at 3 or at 11 or at 10, you're going to start the session at that time.
Wait, are you saying the Democrats had problems with time?
They had very difficult problems with time, and I still tease them about that. But no, we're going to start the session on time, and we're going to try to conduct the matters on the floor. I'm sure there'll be vigorous debate. I expect that. But I think we'll conduct the floors professionally. We're going to conduct the chamber professionally. Way too many staff people in the chamber. I'm not saying that we're going to limit access, but the doors are going to be closed so you can hear debate. Oftentimes the doors of the chamber were wide open. You hear yelling in the hallways. We want the Senate to be conducted in a very professional manner, I think the manner in which the people of the state expect.
Okay, but just to be clear, though, there has been, it appears like, this new era of transparency that's being ushered in at the Capitol. One of the first things that Andrew Cuomo did was this sort of symbolic removal of the concrete barriers that dated back to 9/11. Then he cut a ribbon to open up what we sort of jokingly refer to as Fort Pataki, but the doors on the second floor of the Capitol are now open. Then you and Senator Skelos removed what now we've come to call Fort Sampson, which is a desk that blocked
That's correct.
Third floor,
yeah,
right?
So that people could have even flow throughout the Capitol, yes.
Okay, so you will still be, however, allowing people into the chamber?
Yes, certainly. Look at the galleries will be open, and people have to go through the metal detectors just like they always have. I think that's for the safety, because we took down years ago the bulletproof glass that was up in the galleries. So members of the public can come and watch the session. Our concern was that there were times that on the floor there were more staff members than there were senators, and it became a little uncomfortable because you really couldn't hear the debate. So we just want to make sure that the floor is run in an orderly fashion, and that's something that I'll do. You
have also been, among your many duties, running the transition, right, between from the Democrats to the Republicans in terms of the majority.
That's correct.
There's been a problem with cash, is my understanding.
Huge problem.
There's a shortfall. Last I saw it was $7 million. Is it more
Well,
than that?
$7 million is the number that's been reported, but I will tell you that it's upwards to 10 and maybe even greater, because as we continue to go through contracts, leases that were signed, payments were held back, so it didn't look like money was spent. I mean, we're going through all that right now. We think it's going to be closer to 10 million or higher.
How did that happen exactly?
Well, I think you'd have to ask Senator Sampson and the leadership over there. I mean, they were responsible. They're responsible for the Senate budget. The majority leader and his staff are the ones who are responsible. So they overspent. I mean, they just grossly overspent, and it's very unfortunate because it's going to have a negative effect moving forward.
Well, where does that so where does that leave the Republicans? In other words, I read a report that there were some regional offices that you are now considering closing.
Yes, I'm going to make recommendations on those. We will probably close all the regional offices. We're going to look at other real estate that we don't need, if we can move into state office buildings where there's no rent. These are the kinds of things we have to look at.
Well, but isn't that sort of a dichotomy? You're trying to keep the Senate open, you want to have more public access, and yet you're closing down all these regional offices. That's the point where the public, a lot of people who don't come to Albany, access the Senate, is it not?
Well, I think regional offices have been traditionally political offices.
That's true.
Whether Democrats or Republicans, and I will say this, I'm going to make a very bold statement. Senators have their own district offices. They function out of those offices. We don't need all these regional offices.
And how many of them are there actually?
Oh, I think there's 7 that I'm aware of, but there may be some that we're just finding. We're finding that there's a lot of nook and crannies in New York City where people, quite a few staff members have been housed at quite high salaries.
Really?
Yes.
How many people are being let go in this transition?
Well, I can't give you a specific number, but I can tell you that we told the present minority, the former majority, that over the course of the first 2 months, they needed to cut 32% right off of the top, and then they needed to cut an additional percentage. I mean, we need to get them down by April 1st. I mean, right now, it's $7 million. We're finding that there are other issues, but payroll-wise, there's $7 million overspent. So that's going to come out of next year's budget.
And does that hinder you in your ability to hire? I mean, we're talking
sure it
about
does.
central
Sure does.
staff,
Sure
right?
it does.
Central staff, for people who don't really maybe understand the way the
Right.
Senate works, is the sort of the backbone of the Senate. It is not the individual senator staff. It is the staff that, for example, works for committees or works in program and council, helps draft bills and that kind of thing. How is that going to prevent you?
Liz, technically between now and April 1st, the present minority, who is the former majority, will have more people on their central staff than we will during that period of time. Now, we're not looking to increase the payroll. We think that we can do an effective job with less than we had before when we were in the majority. I mean, we're looking at all those things. Senator Skelos is very matter of fact. He said it actually a little while ago to members that, you know, we don't need to hire legions of people. We need to hire the right amount of people to serve the people that we represent. So we're looking at all these things. I mean, it's a very serious deficit, and it's a very serious matter.
I actually understand that there was just a conference, a meeting of the members of this, and Senator Skelos was pretty clear in saying that he thought that don't forget what happened to you in the minority. I remember when there was the 40 years that the Republicans had been in 2008, the Democrats took over. Even you and I had conversations where you said, I had no idea it was this bad here.
Absolutely.
So how are you going to ensure that you are not, in fact, treating members of the minority with the lack of dignity that they had before?
I think dignity is the key thing. Number one, remember, we're in the majority. Okay, we are in the majority, which means with the majority comes certain responsibilities and things that you have to do. But at the same time, I feel very strongly in the fact that we are 62 elected senators, representatives, and we're going to do what we can. I know that I'm going to do everything I can to impose upon our conference why it's as important as possible to make sure that those 62 elected representatives, you know, aren't in a two-class system. Because at the end of the day, we each represent the equal number of people, 300,000 or whatever that number is.
But what does that mean? I mean, you've got colleagues, for example, John Monasak
Sure.
has suggested that everybody should be equal. And in fact, at the federal level, everybody starts with a certain number of resources. You get a base level of resources. Is that correct?
Yeah, and Liz, that's actually happened here. I mean, we're going to do, the Democrats, we worked out after that famous day in
The day that shall not be named,
yeah.
right.
But we worked out after that a base for all members of 350, and then the minorities and majorities got an allotment. And then, for instance, Senator Skelos with us gave each of us who were rankers on a committee an extra allotment to pay for staff. And then, depending on seniority or responsibility, he gave us a little bit more. So that's up to the respective leaders.
So you're going to stick with that?
To make
then?
it, yeah, we're going to keep that 350 base all the way across the board, and then we will give Senator Sampson an amount of money for him to really, that's his discretion. We're going to let him spend it the way he wants to. If he chooses to give each one of his ranking members an extra, pick a number, 25 or 50,000 to hire ranking committee people, that's his business.
What about member items? Do you expect, first of all, that there will be member items?
Well, you know, Tom Libous speaking, I don't expect, we have a huge deficit, and I mean, the governor's talking about freezing public salaries and cutting staffs and consolidations. I really do. I think member items are a far reach at this point. I think it'd be kind of difficult to even think about member items when you're cutting people's jobs.
Could you commit to the same 5% pay cut or the 5% spending cut? You know, not just the pay cut. Governor Cuomo said, I'm going to cut my own pay to lead by example. But he also said, I'm going to seek to cut the executive chamber budget by 5%. Could the Senate Republicans do that?
Well, I'm going to tell you what. I actually, my staff took a voluntary pay cut 2 years ago, 5%. So I'm pretty proud of that. We are actually looking right now. See, the problem we have is that the Senate's already given, the minority already put the budget in for this coming year. Now, having said that, I've got to balance that budget with Senator Skelos because of the deficit. I think you'll find some interesting things here. we in the minority, the Republicans, we actually came in $5 million under budget. So yes, there will be some savings. We'll talk about those savings because we have to be responsible also and show that there can be savings. But right now we're trying to make up a deficit, which is going to be a problem.
But just, it's not out of the question that there would be potentially the Republicans in the Senate following the lead of the governor.
I think the Republicans in the Senate are going to do whatever we can to hold the line and show the people of the state that we're responsible and that we understand that this deficit is a serious thing.
It's interesting, you know, it seems like the Senate Republicans have a lot in common with the governor these days.
So far, I hope it works for a while.
Yeah. Are you expecting that you're going to like what you hear tomorrow at the State of the State?
You know what? I don't think anybody's going to like what we hear because of the deficit, but I do think the governor has some good ideas, and I think we're committed to helping him with those good ideas. I've said this before, I'll continue to say it. I want Andrew Cuomo to succeed, because if he succeeds, the state will succeed, and we'll all be able to move forward.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Senator Tom
Certainly.
Libous, for making time for us. I know you're quite busy.
My pleasure.
Thanks.